Without these two essential groove ingredients, your grooves will stay shaky and beginner sounding, and creating a good feel and pocket will be near impossible. But don't worry, I'll break down for you these two steps so that you're rapidly becoming the polished pro you know you're made to be. You can do this. Hey, welcome to the Non-Glamorous Drummer. I'm so glad you're hanging out today. My goal is to help you become the polished sounding musical drummer who sounds great playing songs and who other people want to have in their band. And we do this by teaching you the core, most important drumming skills that take you the furthest and that also save you a whole bunch of time in the practice room. I'm all about getting you quick results. And hey, speaking of quick results, if you want to feel confident and capable and at home at your drums and be able to play the ideas you hear in your head, you have to build four-way coordination. I have a free e-guide that's gonna help you out a bunch with this. Because see, without four-way coordination, everything you ever play on the drums is difficult. But with four-way coordination, everything is fun and easy. It's like a superpower. When your brain can split up and control your limbs the way you're supposed to on the drums, everything is more fun. It's easier to learn stuff. You can learn new songs more easily. It's awesome. And this is what I want for you. So I want you to download my free guide. It's called 30 Days to Four-Way Rock Coordination. And the way this works, each day is just a new groove that builds off the previous ones. You're gradually layering in your limbs and you're working new aspects of coordination. That way you have the building blocks to go and play whatever you want to play and nail songs. This is going to help you out a bunch. What I've heard from students is that once you get to days 12, 13, 14, 15, that's when the magic starts happening. So stick with it, get past the sophomore slump. It might not be easy, but hey, the best things that are worth doing aren't always easy. So stick with it, get to about halfway through and you're going to get some serious results. But have fun with this guide. It's totally free. It's in the description below. Dive in, build some coordination so that you can play whatever you hear in your head. All right, on with today's lesson. So you may relate to this. I remember being in a place in my playing when I was kind of getting into that intermediate stage where I could play a lot of cool stuff, but it didn't sound very good. And so I remember comparing my playing with other professional drummers that I was hearing, that I was watching, and I came to the conclusion that, you know, I can play a lot of cool stuff, but it just doesn't sound as good as when they play it. Why is it that the professional drummers can play the same things I'm playing, like I can play what they're playing, and that was a good feeling, but when they play it, it sounds better. And when they play a simple groove, it sounds better than when I play a simple groove. And that was really frustrating to me. And I started hearing people talking about groove and pocket and feel, and oh yeah, the drummer has such a great feel. I had no clue what in the world that meant. And that was really frustrating to me because I knew I could play difficult stuff. I could play a lot of notes. I could play cool things. I was building the coordination, building the chops. But it sounded shaky and it sounded sloppy and it felt amateur, unlike the professionals who just sounded smooth and polished. And I had no idea how to get there, and that was really frustrating to me. Well, what I'm breaking down for you today are the two ingredients to great feel. If you do these two things, your groove is going to feel like that of a professional. These were the two things that I was not doing well when I was in high school and kind of even into college. I had to learn a lot of this with experience and learn a lot of this the hard, frustrating way. But I hope to save you some time because I'm going to give you some super practical stuff to start practicing right now. And if you implement these things, you are going to very quickly begin to excel in these two areas, which means you're going to build some great feel, great pocket, and you're going to sound like a professional. Also, we've got a third thing I'm going to share with you that is a really cool bonus that's kind of that final piece of the puzzle that you definitely don't want to miss. So let's dive in. Essential groove ingredient number one. This is arguably the drummer's most important job. The number one most important thing to making a groove feel good. What do you think it is? I bet you can guess it. And if you have a hunch of what it is, even if you're a total beginner, you're probably right. Time. The drummer's number one job is to keep time. Now, a robot can keep time. Artificial intelligence can keep time. A metronome can keep time. A drum machine can keep time. But a lot of times those things don't have great feel. They can keep good time, but not so much have great feel. And so we know that there's another missing element. That's what we're going to talk about next. But hey, time is super important. The challenge is that we're human. And so playing precisely in time is hard. It's frustrating because you're never going to have perfect time. No matter how hard you try, you will never have perfect time. But we want to get as close to that as we can. And we want at least our time to be good enough that our listener cannot perceive any shifts in time. That is actually very possible and not that difficult to do. And I want to help you do it. So here's what you need to do. Practice with and without a metronome, because building good time isn't just about doing the things of practicing to a metronome, it's about listening. The more you learn to listen, the more aware you are of how you're sounding and you're playing, the better your time is going to get. So this is kind of a three action steps here. Three-step thing I want you to go through to build your time. Number one, record yourself playing a basic groove with no music or metronome. So just you playing, let's say money beat. Just do that. Pick a tempo, play for like a minute at least. Record yourself doing it. Then listen back, try to line it up with a metronome, and make notes on whether or not you rushed or dragged. Now that's a great beginner thing to do. If you're more intermediate, if you know some songs well, sit there and play your favorite song, but without the music playing. So no music in your ears, no metronome, just you trying to remember the song. It's fine if you mess it up. Point is, just you playing, naked and exposed. You're just playing the song. That's even better, because then when you listen back, you can see what parts of the song did you rush? What parts of the song did you drag? Did you speed up as you got louder? Did you drag as you slowed down? I don't know. We're all different. That's why you got to listen back, make some notes on that. Then, step number two, practice that same thing you just did with the metronome. So maybe it's just the basic groove, maybe it's just the song, but just you playing. Practice it with the metronome and then without the metronome. With the metronome off, really listen to yourself and see if you can hear the shifts in time. Because what will happen, so now you've done it, you've listened back, you know where the weaknesses are, you know where what the things are, where you rush, where you drag, you know what your tendencies are. You've got to know your tendencies. So now you can practice with a metronome, work on correcting those, fight to correct them. Okay, I'm not going to speed up here, I'm not going to slow down here, I'm going to keep this solid, I'm going to hold the fort down. Then after that, practice it without the metronome, but focus on making sure, it's almost like you're hearing the metronome in your head. Try to still hear and feel that metronome, even without it, and see if you can still keep things steady. And we're basically repeating step one at that point. Record yourself again and see, hey, how did I do this second time? But hey, we're not totally done. Our final step here for building time, metronome weaning. Now, I have a specific lesson here on the channel all about this. So if you want to go more in depth, I'll link it below. Metronome weaning, use an app like Gap Click. This is a really cool, like $2, $3 app that's well worth buying. Use an app like Gap Click to practice with intervals of click and then no click so that you can really test and solidify your time and listening skills. So basically what this app does, you set the tempo, you set the subdivision, you know, whether you want it to go bump, 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 or bump, 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 quarters or eighths, whatever. And you can tell it how many measures to click and then how many measures of silence to insert. So maybe you have it play for 3 bars and then a measure of silence, 3 bars, measure of silence, or whatever other intervals you want to do. Point is, the metronome goes silent for however long, and then it comes back in. You've been playing along the whole time. You find out if you were still with it. That is the ultimate test of time. And what's so cool is as you get going, let's say you've got 4 bars of metronome. You're locking in with it. If you're locked in with it, you don't even notice when it slips out from under you. So maybe you do 4 bars of metronome, 2 bars of no metronome. And over that 2 bars, you're just listening, you're feeling the time. And the more you do this, you'll start to find, oh, I wasn't too far off. I was still right there with it when it came back in. But hey, this is a test of patience. Nobody nails this the first try. It's taken me a lot of practice to get to where I can kind of do it pretty well most of the time. So give yourself some grace, be patient with yourself, but you can do this. This is an exercise so worth practicing. Check out the specific lesson on this in the description for all the details. The point of all of this, these 3 steps, is to get you to where you are so in tune with how you sound as you're playing that you can hear whether or not you're playing in time or not. That's what has to happen. You have to know whether or not, oh, I just sped up a little bit, I just slowed down a little bit. You want to get to where when you're playing along with Gap Click, you know before the metronome comes back in, oh, I feel like I just dragged, I'm going to be late. Sure enough, I'm late. That's when you know you're making progress, where maybe you're making the mistake. You're not perfect, but you know what your mistake is before the metronome verifies it for you, if that makes sense. In other words, you can feel that you're speeding up, and then the metronome comes back in and confirms that. That's where you want to be. That is a tremendous win. That's where you want to get with this. But hey, if you repeat this whole process, your time will get better and better and better rapidly. I wish I had practiced this stuff early on. It's going to help you out a bunch, but go check out that additional lesson for more detail on this if you want to. All right, essential groove ingredient number 2. So remember a minute ago, I told you how, okay, time is important, but a robot can have perfect time. A click has perfect time. A drum machine has perfect time. But those things are not human. So what is that human element? Well, there is a feel element that is more important than time. I think the second groove ingredient here is more important than time. Hear me out, because I've got a pretty good argument for why this is the case. The second groove ingredient is dynamics. Now, you might say, well, you can control the dynamics of a drum machine. You can control the dynamics of your click, of whatever program drums you do. And that's true, and you can work at it to try to make it feel more human, but it still takes a human to do that and to create that. And there's something about the imperfections of a human playing the drums that create what we know as feel. So that's kind of a whole nother discussion, but a groove has more character and more feel and uniqueness when it is a human, and we humans bring those imperfections to the table. Because as humans listening to music, we want to hear, at least this is me, this is my belief here, me speaking. As a human, when I listen to a recorded drum part, I want to hear some humanity in that drum part that helps convey the emotion of the song. We don't want to hear robots singing the lead vocal on a song, so I don't want to hear a robot playing the drum part either. That's just me. I know I could be stepping on toes there. That's a topic for another lesson. But hey, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this. So we need to have feel applied to our time, and we do this with dynamics. Dynamics are even more important than time. Now the thing is, we struggle with this a lot of times because we often lack the smooth motions in our playing that help us to naturally play at steady volumes. So what am I talking about here? Well, let's say we're playing a money beat. I'm gonna play something chill here for sake of volume since I don't have my in-ears in. But if we're playing a basic money beat, we need to be steady in our volumes. That cross stick needs to be the same volume each time. The kick needs to be the same volume each time. We need to decide how loud is the accent, how loud is the tap on the hi-hat, because if it gets haphazard like this, maybe we leave out a note. So it's very difficult to make the dynamics sloppy and not also make the entire thing sloppy. I end up getting sloppy across the board when my dynamics get sloppy. But the point is, if the dynamics are not steady, your listener cannot relax. We relax into repetitiveness. When we feel something that's repetitive and predictable, we're able to relax. It's just like a heartbeat. When our heart is beating properly, it is repetitive and it's predictable. And it's the same way with music. We want to hear that heartbeat, that repetition. That's not to say we can't change our dynamics, but our dynamic changes need to be consistent and smooth, and we need to be very mindful of them. So back to the grip motion thing. If our grip is tight and we're physically tense when we play, we're gonna have a very hard time with this. We're gonna be working so hard to play evenly and smoothly that it's gonna sound anything but even and smooth. But if your grip is relaxed and you are physically relaxed, everything starts to feel smooth because the sticks are working for you, and the laws of physics help make things smooth for you. Work smarter, not harder. This all comes down to the basics of grip. Now, we've got a whole bunch of lessons here on the channel going way more in depth about grip than we're gonna go right now. But the gist of it is, have a fulcrum point in your hand. Let the stick swing freely. You can make that fulcrum up here close to your palm if you're playing loudly. That gives you some more security because your fingers can wrap around more. Point is, make sure you're getting rebound on whatever you hit. And practice your singles. This is something we've talked about before. 99% of our playing on the drums is built of singles. So if you're wondering what you should be practicing, and if you're constrained to practice pad practice because you can't make noise, what is the logical thing to practice? Singles. Yes, it sounds mundane. Yes, it sounds monotonous. But if you sit here and you practice your singles, you practice different dynamics, gradually getting louder, gradually getting softer, being intentional, controlling your loudness, staying nice and even, and saying, all right, I'm going to hold this volume no matter what. I'm going to do that over and over again for 3 minutes. Guess what that does? That allows you to keep time steadily with steady dynamics and steady time. Practice really slow singles. Guess what that translates to? Steady backbeats. You could be playing a groove with backbeats. And as long as that backbeat is steady, your audience perceives it as smooth and in time. Because here's the funny thing. you can play things slightly out of time, but have the dynamics nice and solid and steady, and your listener will perceive it as perfect time. Your listener, your audience, humans, we perceive dynamics more acutely than we perceive time. A slight time shift, we don't really notice. I mean, go listen to, let's see, go listen to like a Toto record from the 80s. They didn't record Rosanna to a click, but yet it feels super tight and super solid, but you can't line up a metronome with it. The timing is imperfect, but Jeff Porcaro's dynamics were so steady and they were so tight as a band, you can't tell the difference. And that's so cool. So here's one more thing you can do besides sitting here and practicing singles, which is important. Play a money beat. So kick on 1 and 3, snare on 2 and 4, eighth notes on the hats or the ride. What I want you to practice doing as you're playing that money beat is listen to each individual limb. Pay attention to how it's sounding. So as you're playing, listen to the kick. Okay, how is my kick sounding? Is it nice and even? Am I bouncing the beater each time? Am I burying it? Because if you're bouncing it sometimes, burying it other times, that's going to sound sloppy because it's going to sound different each time. It needs to be nice and consistent. Your backbeats, are you hitting in the middle of the snare? Are you hitting the same part on the snare each time? Or are you sometimes off center so that sometimes it goes like that and rings more? Are you playing half rim shots and half in the center? Commit to one or the other. There's not a right or wrong, but decide which one you're going to do and stick to it. How open or loose are the hats? Keep them nice and steady. If it sounds like this, where it's like random haphazard open and then close, that sounds sloppy. But if you keep it the same, you can relax into that. It feels nice and smooth. That's how you create the smoothness, by having that same repetitive sound. So sit there and play your money beat. And as you're playing it, spend a few seconds listening to the right hand. How's it sounding? Is it steady? Does it feel good? How does the right foot sound? Is it nice and steady? Same volume. How am I hitting the snare? Be mindful of that, and as soon as you start becoming mindful of these things, you'll find that you become aware of them all the time. Like, you can't not think about them now. Once you've started thinking about these things, you will always be thinking about them, and you will naturally get better and better at doing them well and creating that great feel. So practice your singles. Pay attention to your dynamics as you're playing a money beat. And at that point, you're incorporating steady dynamics into steady time. And when you're applying everything we just talked about into the timing exercises, so metronome weaning, if you're applying that great feeling dynamic steadiness to timing steadiness, playing along with gap click, you are going to feel so polished. The results are going to be tremendous, and there is going to be nothing stopping you from being a totally pro-sounding, smooth drummer. You can do this. Okay, one last thing, and this is actually pretty important, especially for those of you who are playing songs, maybe playing in a cover band, you're playing at church, you're starting to play music, and you're starting to notice, why is it that, you know, maybe I played this with great time and great dynamics, but it still doesn't feel right? Well, a groove might still feel completely wrong without this one last component. This is our final piece of the puzzle here. And that final piece of the puzzle is appropriate sound. If the drums don't sound right for the song, then even if you're playing with great dynamics and great time, it still might not feel right for the song. I'll explain this a little bit more. Just as an example, let's imagine, let's take the Beatles and Led Zeppelin. So we've got Ringo Starr's sound, John Bonham's sound, two very different drum sounds. Now imagine we're playing Come Together by the Beatles. We might put some towels on the drums, we might muffle them down like this. So it's kind of the tea towel thing that Ringo was doing. We can get a great Beatles feel by doing that. But now let's say that we play our muffled down tea towel drums playing Whole Lotta Love by Led Zeppelin. It's not going to feel right. It will not matter how well we play it. It is not going to feel right if we're playing a Zeppelin song with quiet, dead drums. It's just not going to work. On the flip side, let's say we've got the snare loud and ringy, we've got all these big drums, and it's all, you know, big room, pa, pa, and we're trying to play Come Together. It's not going to work. And so sometimes it doesn't matter how good of a drummer you are, how well you're playing, how in the pocket your feel is, it's still not going to be the right feel, the right pocket for that song if the drum sound is completely off. So how do we deal with this? Well, let's be practical. So when you're on a gig, you're playing cover songs, or let's say you're playing at church and you've got different kinds of songs with different feels. You can't just change your drum set for every song, right? But here's what's interesting. You could play an entire 30-song cover gig with the same kick and toms and cymbals, and switch out the snare sound all the time. And as far as the listener is concerned, you might as well have changed the entire drum set each time. Because what we hear the most, what our ear gravitates to the most with any drum sound is the snare. And so if we've got the right snare sound for a song, it really doesn't matter a ton if the toms and the kick and the cymbals aren't perfect. As long as they're okay and it's a good versatile, medium in between kind of sound, if we've got the appropriate snare sound, we're probably going to be good to go. So let's say we're playing a Zeppelin song or like a big loud, even like a 90s rock song. And so we need to convey that kind of sound. Well, make sure the snare is not muffled. So my jingly thing that kind of serves as a muffling device, I've got that off. So we've got a little bit of ring here. And so this sound right here might work for the song. But hey, that sound is not at all gonna work if we're gonna play Come Together. So, okay, let's try this. Throw this towel over the snare. Within 5 seconds, we instantly have a totally different snare sound. Or, hey, take any like 70s dance tune, like Rock With You, Michael Jackson. And suddenly that works. No, the kick sound isn't perfect. The hi-hat sound didn't change, but changing the snare sound drastically changed the feel. Let's say we're going to like a Prince song or some sort of 70s or 80s ballad. We want a deep snare. Here's just a head cutout. You can always just throw a head cutout on here, loosen the snares a little bit. Within a couple of seconds, we've got instantly different snare sound, and you'll find that that completely changes the feel of the groove. So you can go from quiet and dead for a 70s disco song or like a Beatles song to deep for like a Prince ballad, like Purple Rain, think Purple Rain, or a lot of Prince songs, or wide open and ringy for Led Zeppelin or for Dave Matthews Band, you name it. So what I want you to be thinking about is pick a favorite song, whatever song comes to mind, and play along and just ask yourself, do my drums feel right for this song? If not, what can I do real quick to change the snare sound to make it work? Don't even worry about the toms and the kick. Sure, you could do that. You can go overboard and have fun with it. But we're just talking quick changes. What can you change about your snare on the fly to just make it feel a little bit more appropriate for the song? It's amazing to me how in gigging scenarios, recording scenarios, if I don't feel good about my snare sound, I feel like I can't play the song well. I've got to get the snare feeling right for the song. And once I do that, it all comes together. Everything feels good. The snare sound is so important. And so focus specifically on that snare, making it sound appropriate for the song. If you need a quick way to detune it, like make it sound low without a head cutout, this is a great trick though, just detune a couple lugs and you'll get that dead sound. Remember to play around with snare tightness. If you loosen the snares, that'll give you a perception of a lower sound. Tighten the snares, it gives you the perception of a higher sound. And so mess around with those things. Just get to know your instrument a little bit. And you can even do some quick tuning moves in between songs and tune things up a little bit. You can throw muffling on or off. You can do the bandana thing, whatever you want to try to get the appropriate snare sound. That way your playing feels right and is the right feel, the right pocket for whatever the song is. So as we wrap up, I got to ask you, tell me in the comments, what do you think the biggest difference is between your drumming right now and that of your favorite drumming hero? So whoever your favorite drummer is out there, whoever you've been watching and listening to, what is the biggest difference you can pinpoint between your playing right now and that drummer's playing? So let's figure out, okay, where is point A? Where am I right now? Where is point B, where that drummer is, where I want to go? And what can you take from today's lesson to help you get there? You need to improve your time. Probably, we can all improve our time. Do you need to improve your dynamics? Probably, we all need to do that. Focus on your grip, smooth motion, that's gonna help out a lot with that. Maybe you're at the level where it's time to just talk sound. Play around with that snare sound, that's gonna help you out a bunch on gigs. Let me know in the comments, let's talk about this. But hey, you can do this. You can build that pocket, that smooth, great feeling pocket that makes you sound like a polished pro. You are fully capable of doing that and stepping into that professional drummer sound that you are made to do. You can do this. I hope you have fun with this. I'll see you on the next lesson. Stay non-glamorous.